Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I'm setting up my dye pan with 4 cups of water, 2 tablespoons of white vinegar, and I am about to add 200 grams of sock yarn into here so we can dye it in a summery Christmas colorway. Today's video is sponsored by Belinda in Australia, which should make this summery Christmas theme make more sense. Because right now it is getting very warm in Australia because the seasons are different than the ones that we have here where I am in Massachusetts in the United States. What's especially fun about filming this video today in November is that it was about 15 years ago that I was finishing up my semester studying abroad at the University of Queensland in Australia, and I just remember how hot it got. I'm gonna go ahead and add another 2 cups of water here to our pan. Belinda wrote a beautiful description of Christmas in Australia. Christmas is in summer here, so a cool tropical fruit and cream-laden meringue is in place of a hot Christmas pudding. Mixed berries, kiwi, mango, peaches, starfruit, cherries, basically whatever you can find and however much you can fit. And that sounds so fresh, crisp, and vibrant that I thought it would be fun to play with these fruit colors, bring in these peaches and pinks and bright greens to create a fun speckled colorway. I had pre-soaked the yarn, which is Knit Pick's Stroll Fingering Weight yarn, that is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, for a little over 30 minutes in just some plain tap water. And of course I've added my favorite reusable nylon zip ties on. I use these as an extra tie and they will help me flip the yarn as time goes on. Since we're going to be dealing with acid dye powders, I will be wearing a respirator mask and safety glasses as we apply powder to the yarn. Here is the palette I am planning to play with today. Some of these colors, like the Berry Crush and the Cherry Bomb, I picked because the names really fit the theme. Actually, I guess, and Tangelo. I went for fruity colors today, and I thought it would be fun. I may or may not add some emerald green if I feel like it's needed, but this is where we're going to go, and I think predominantly these 3 with some hints of these 2, and maybe, I don't want to overdo it, but I love having these pre-mixed colors around. The Golden Poppy might read a little too orange, and if that's the case, actually I think it'll feel very mango. So let's go and have some fun. Since I'm going to be working straight out of the dye containers today, I have a yarn mop on hand. This is some Knit Pick's Swish DK yarn, which is 100% superwash merino, and it's soaked in some water with vinegar for, well, days. I mean, I don't even remember when I mixed that up. But we're going to use it as a yarn mop today. So as I sprinkle the dye onto our other yarn, I will wipe my gloves onto our mop to create a bonus colorway. The yarn is super steamy, and so I'm going to reduce the heat to low because I don't want the steam getting on my fingers as we go in and sort of speckle. I'm not full on speckling. I'm okay with some bigger swatches of color, but I'm going in, picking up a little pinch of color, and then adding it on to the yarn. And so yeah, I guess I go by feel. We're getting some speckles, and I am okay with that. So this is the Cherry Bomb, which honestly is possibly my favorite red. Now that I have a little less dye in my fingers, I'm going around and just adding it really disperse before taking what's left and adding it onto that yarn mop. And just so you can see, it's not like there was that much color left, but I love to leave no dye behind. Let's go into Berry Crush. I love this deep pink tone. And adding some down here. There's some glare from my window. But since I have clean fingers, I can go back in and grab some more bits of this color. So I'm sort of doing these lines. I want the colors to be non-repeating-esque. At least these two skeins are non-identical. But I think hopefully it'll be fun. Okay, and I'm taking what's left and adding it onto my mop. I like what is happening here a lot. I could have gone and mixed this with some citric acid, but I wanted larger splotches. Now I'm coming in with some sour apple, and I'm trying to mix it in a little bit, but also add it to some areas where there wasn't the other colors. So actually, with our two skeins in this pan, they might actually end up feeling fairly different from one another. Going in with that green. Yeah, I really might not need that darker green that I pulled out. I really, really like how this is coming together a lot. Okay. Now we will be layering on color multiple times on this yarn because we're not gonna, like when we flip this over, there'll be a lot of white there. But the color will penetrate further than if I was doing the citric acid technique. I don't even know if we need the Tangelo. I don't think I've tried speckling with the Tangelo before. I'm going especially slow with it, and honestly, I'm not sure how much different from the red it's gonna read. Maybe it'll appear more like different once the yarn is dry. I guess it's like a more orangey red, but since it's a little more concentrated. So with this one, I'm going in really, really slowly. I'm trying to concentrate on areas that have like more red in it already versus areas that have like that green. There. Some hints. Okay. As I wipe it onto the mop, you can see here's the Tangelo, which I picked because I knew it was like, it wasn't super orange, it's sort of reddish orange. There is a distinct difference, but it's really, really subtle. Finally, I'm coming in with some hints of gold. Oh dear, that may have been a large hint. And drop some back off. Some hints of some golden poppy. So I am okay with there being whites left. But since I want this to feel like a fruit salad, a very tropically fruit salad, we need that little bit of mango. A little bit in there, maybe a little bit right there. Just a little bit. And again, I'm trying to like make sure it's like distributed sort of like randomly around. Now I know that I am going to go into the yarn, and likely we'll probably do a total of 4 rounds of dyeing. That tends to be what happens when I do colorways like this. But oof, I am thrilled with the way these colors come together, and that contrast of those little pops of yellow really do add a richness to it, in my opinion. I'm going to turn the heat back up a bit. And again, we will get a little more color penetration here than we would with citric acid, because it'll be a little less shallow. The colors will sink in just because there's more color there a little bit further. But I am going to let this steam itself for 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, and let's take a closer look. I am still seeing some color in some of these areas. So I think maybe not a ton. Yeah, I mean, things are gonna spread out. We're gonna end up with some like pink all over, and I'm gonna need to just be aware of that. But I think I will go ahead and wait 5 more minutes just to give it a little more time. Okay, we are going to flip her, but you can see we actually have some color going through the layers, so it's not nothing, unlike what we see with some techniques. So we might not need to do quite as many rounds, but we'll see. So we can see, we see some color here on the other side, which is good. And certain colors spread more than others. There will definitely be, at the very least, a 3rd round. Some white patches are fine, but areas like that you need to worry about the most are inside the folds, like at either end and here towards the top. So I try to focus a little bit on that as we're dealing with this. But all right, I am going to speed things up and add color to this side. This time, since the breaks when I went to go wash my hands are included, you can see a little bit more of the color spread than last time. But as before, in between each color, I did go wash my hands and dry it, since I'm going straight into the dye jars. And then, oh, but I did wipe my fingers on the yarn mop, of course, before going over to the sink. And I was wearing my mask and safety glasses and gloves for this whole part. And since the water level's getting a little low, I'm carefully adding, sort of going down the edge, another 2 cups of water into the pan. And yeah, that definitely caused some of these colors to spread out a little bit, but you know, it is what it is, and maybe, well, we'll see after the time is up, after 15 minutes is up, and like I go in and look, but now I can turn up the heat. So cross your fingers for me. Alright, reducing the heat again. The colors have definitely spread out. That's probably mea culpa for for adding all that water in. But if I move it again and sort of try to open up this inside area, which maybe got less color, maybe like there's some areas where I might want to add a little bit of green, or maybe some pops of that orange. I think we're pretty set for pink. I might add a tiny bit of red, but overall, not too bad. Do want to try to give myself as much access to those areas with less color to go on and add just a little bit more. But things are penetrating enough that, like, I don't want to overdo it, but you can see some areas where I feel like it would be safe to add more green. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and add some color off camera and then be back and we'll look at the finished, or almost finished yarn. here is the after. I'm gonna let this sit a good 15 minutes, and then we'll add a lot of water to it to do some full immersion soaking of this colorway. As for our yarn mop, we actually have some pretty good color coverage. I'm going to go ahead and steam this off camera in a steamer basket for 30 minutes. It's been 15 minutes, and now I am pouring in 4 cups of water with 4 tablespoons of white vinegar. And I'm actually going to add another 4 cups. No additional vinegar this time. I feel like there's probably plenty in here. But I want to give space for all of the yarn to move around, because I want any residual dye powder that is left on the yarn to absorb. And the good thing is, looking in, I'm not seeing a ton of color in there, so that is great. But I'm going to go ahead and heat this on medium to high until I start seeing some movement, but for a total of 15 minutes. The 15 minutes are up, so I'm now going to turn off the heat and let the yarn cool off in the pan. But if you look at that water, I'm not seeing any bleeding, which is a great sign for our yarn. And once the yarn has cooled completely, then we can wash it. Here is the yarn, and now we can wash it. So I'm really happy with this colorway. The one thing I wish is that, and maybe I should have picked a different sort of pink. I don't have a Dharma pastel pink in my collection, but if I did, that potentially would have given us still bright pink speckles, but maybe we would not have as much of the pink wash all over the yarn. Don't get me wrong, this is still beautiful, and it definitely doesn't feel Christmassy, even tropically Christmassy, as it did with some more white and with the colors that more spread out in the pan. Nevertheless, it does feel like a fruit salad. No question. I feel that fruit salad, and I feel that warmth in summer. But you can see that we have no bleeding, so I'm going to finish rinsing out that soap, put it through the spin dryer, and hang it up to dry. I think that there is a real benefit to playing with colors a lot, because the more you play with a certain color, the more you get a sense of how it behaves when you, for example, speckle with it. And the more you know how it might behave, the more you can use that to your advantage to create the colorways you want. I am still absolutely learning with all of these colors. There are so many to choose from and play with, but I am still extremely happy with this result. Here is our Leave No Dye Behind colorway, which I think is also super gorgeous. I think that if it were on this same yarn base, this would pair with the other colorway really, really nicely as a fade, because this has a bit more white and the other one is just a little brighter and more speckled. But I don't know, I know I've been doing so many of these Leave No Dye Behinds lately, and I just love them. It is so much fun to just literally randomly wipe my fingers on the yarn. And the colors that we create are just spectacular. So again, I'll rinse out the soap. We're not seeing any bleeding, thank goodness. And I'm going to put everything through the spin dryer and hang it up to dry. Belinda from Australia, I really hope you love this yarn as much as I do. I'm not sure how Christmassy it really feels, but there's no question I feel summertime and sunshine and tropical fruit in this colorway. It can be nerve-wracking layering on greens with oranges and pinks, because if they land too much on top of one another, it could turn a little bit brown. Not that it's a bad thing, but that's not what we wanted. We wanted to preserve these colors, and I think it worked really well. The reason why it worked so well is because when I was placing the dye, I tried to keep the greens separate from the other tones. Yes, we got pinks spread out all over the place as I think that Berry Crush, the color just spread. But because the pink is so less pigmented than the green on top of that pink background isn't turning brown. It's still that bright kiwi green color. The yarn mop turned out amazing on its own too. And again, each time after I would speckle colors, I would have some dye powder left, either maybe a tiny bit left pinched or just on my gloves, and I would just come and wipe it, and I would shift and wipe over and over. And I think that this colorway is just as fun as these speckled ones. And honestly, if it was the same yarn base, I think that the two would work together stunningly for a fairly subtle kind of fade. Ironically, the yarn mop might be a little closer to the original color vision I was going for with the white with these pops of color, because I think that I didn't overdo it. And one thing about speckling with straight powders is that it's really easy to go too far and add a little too much. Nevertheless, I am thrilled with both colorways. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and once again I would like to give a huge thank you and shout out to Belinda in Australia for sponsoring today's video. If you want to learn more about sponsoring an episode of Dyepot Weekly, you can find a link to the Etsy listing in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop in the video description and iCard. Sponsors get 100 grams of hand-dyed yarn featured in the videos, and I designed the project with you in mind. The final colorways are ultimately a surprise, but based on the information you provide, I try to come up with something I think will be an awesome, amazing fit. Don't forget that the Etsy shop is filled with hundreds of skeins of hand-dyed yarn featured in other videos, which make them a really fun and unique gift for any knitters that might be on your holiday list. Maybe you want to give them some yarn, and since they can go and watch how the yarn was dyed, that adds like another element of fun to the yarn that's in my shop. With the holiday season quickly approaching, and since this is a Australian Christmas inspired yarn, I'd like to take this opportunity to wish everyone a very early Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I hope that wherever in the world you are celebrating, whatever you are celebrating, that your new year will be filled with warmth, yarn, and light. Don't forget that the Hanukkah special will start on December 22nd. I cannot wait for you guys to see everything that I have created for this series. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. We will be ending 2019 with an awesome bang of a ton of content. So buckle up, because it's going to be a really colorful ride. Thank you so much for watching, everyone.